Money Arata. These days, it seems like everyone has to be an investment expert as part of a basic survival kit. It is not by chance that there are so many books on finance today, products even for people with little income, and so many influencers talking about investments. Until recently, that didn't happen. Our grandparents' generation didn't know so much about investments because they didn't need to. Our parents' generation already had to know a little more. And now our generation is practically forced to learn, especially those who have already managed to save some money and dream of having financial freedom. But what has changed from older generations to ours? Today there is greater freedom for governments to be printing money without collateral, causing inflation, and thus devaluing the money that people manage to save by working. And before some fiat economists, the economists who defend the interventionism of the state, come here to criticize, saying that the increase of the monetary base doesn't increase inflation, we just have to remember Milton Friedman's classic definition. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon in the sense that it is and can be produced only by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than in output. Until the 1970s, government-issued money was backed by gold. The country had to have gold reserves roughly equivalent to the value of the money that was printing. Now, for a number of reasons that we have already mentioned in the other episodes of the Money Arata series, the gold standard was left aside, and therefore today governments have the possibility to issue as much money as they want. And the problem is that when they do that, they end up devaluing the money that people have. If people leave their money under their mattress, in a while, that money will be worth a lot less than it is worth today. Depending on the country's inflation rate, it might be worth nothing. This constant devaluation of money forces people to invest, and even people who wouldn't have the slightest interest, the vocational desire to enter the financial market. The return on savings is less than the destruction of the purchasing power by inflation. And that is why it makes people who have not had a minimum of financial education to be forced to try to learn about stocks and real estate funds and fixed income and other investments. It is an attempt to at least maintain the purchasing power of the money that they have been collecting over the years. And this is often promoted as something positive, as an empowerment of people over their own money. But when we look at closely, it shouldn't be like that. It is not normal for people to need to learn how to be investing in risky assets. It is not normal for a person at age 60 to be forced to buy and sell stocks at their home broker, trying to understand how cryptocurrencies work or analyzing real estate funds. It is not normal for a medical professor to have to spend time listening to some finance influencer on social media. It is not normal for someone to have to worry about the questions about how to maintain purchasing power of their own money. If you really like the financial market, that is fine. But nowadays, we have a population of savers who basically have no choice but to enter the capital markets unprepared. And since the legal tender laws forced people to be stuck in the state currency that devalues over time, this was the only option. It was. Because now we have real money available that doesn't lose value over time, that is Bitcoin. Please note, this is not financial service. Please read the full disclaimer before proceeding. Bitcoin is a way to keep savings. Bitcoin is not an investment. Bitcoin does what real money should do. It doesn't lose value due to an excessive issuance by a central authority. If you still don't understand how governments issuing money keep you poor, you can research the Cantillon effect to understand. Bitcoin was programmed with a very solid logic behind it, the logic of not having a central authority deciding when, how much, and how to issue new units of the currency. The rules for issuing new Bitcoin units were defined before Bitcoin started operating. They are accepted by everyone who decides to participate in the network, and they cannot be modified. No matter what, there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins issued. And with each passing day, it becomes more difficult to issue new Bitcoins. Now, why is that important? Because real and programmed scarcity prevents Bitcoin from being devalued by excess supply of that currency. As we saw in the episode number 9 of the Money Arata series, Bitcoin's stock-to-flow ratio indicates that Bitcoin is sound money. and therefore the price of Bitcoin depends more on demand. If interest in Bitcoin stays the same over the years, the purchasing power of the Bitcoins that you're keeping will remain the same. If demand increases, the price goes up, and the purchasing power of your Bitcoins may even increase. Thus, Bitcoin eliminates the need for people to be forced to be learning about the financial market even against their will. Of course, if you like, you can study stocks and bonds and real estate, but it wouldn't be a necessity. If the idea is just to maintain purchasing power, you just need to have real money that doesn't devalue over time. The need to make money yield profits only exists when you use weak money. The idea that you need to make your money work for you and bring some yield seems so normal these days that it's almost second nature to our job. First, you need to work to earn a salary that is paid in state currency, and then you must invest that money in the financial market to have part of your salary that you manage to save to be growing. It is the only guarantee that your money will be worth something in a few years. See that this only happens because the starting point is that you receive your salary in a certain money that loses value over time. So the sequence is as follows. Government money loses value, then there is a need for you to make money generating yield, and then you're forced to look for financial products to make money generating yield, and then that cycle repeats. Bitcoin fixes this by breaking the cycle right at the starting point. If money doesn't lose value over time, you don't need to be investing in order to find a way to maintain your purchasing power. Of course, you can invest if you want, if you like it, if you understand the financial market, and especially if you want the money to yield to the point of having real gains, producing a purchasing power gain above inflation. Now, the difference is that with weak currency, you're forced to invest. Otherwise, you'll see the money that you've collected to have less and less purchasing power over time. With Bitcoin, you invest only if you want to, if you want interest, if you have the right profile. This is also the difference between saving money and putting your money at risk and try to earn more. If you just want to keep your money in a safe way so that it retains its purchasing power, you don't need to do anything if you're using Bitcoin. You just buy and hold. But if you're using a weak currency, then you have the need to invest. So at least the net income of that money equals the rate of inflation. It is like state money is a hot potato. Nobody wants to hold it for a long time. You have to pass that hot potato on, which means investing. Now, the problem is that every investment has a risk. Even public bonds, they have a degree of risk involved. After all, you're lending your money to the government that promises to return it to you at a certain time, corrected by a certain pre-established interest rate. But neither you or the government know what will happen during this period. What if a health crisis happens or a geopolitical event of enormous repercussion? Anyone who has seen the years 2021, 2022 already knows that these events are not uncommon. They should be part of any well-designed planning. Saving money and investing money are different things. If everyone used sound money, no one would be forced to invest if they didn't feel like it. Many people lose money when they are forced to enter the financial market with little preparation. As much as information is accessible to people today, well, the truth is that the financial market is not simple to understand or to operate. To enter the market and exit with a profit that is higher than inflation, it is necessary to be well prepared. In order to maintain the purchasing power of the government money that they manage to gather, people basically have two ways. The first way is to give the money to bank managers, to fund managers, to other finance professionals who will invest that money according to the person's profile. Of course, this is a paid job. So the professional will charge a fee and will keep part of your money, which will already be, for sure, reducing your earnings. Now, the second way is to try to learn on your own, studying, reading books, and taking courses, and learning, and making mistakes. And as this is not something simple, it is normal for you to lose some money along the way. Neither of these two paths is bad by itself as long as it was your will to want to risk your money to get a return that is higher to the rate of inflation. Now, what is really bad is seeing that people are being forced to do this, often risking and losing money that they have saved their whole lives to get. Furthermore, the financial market is ready to devour the beginners. Anyone who enters this market without knowing what they're doing ends up transferring wealth to those who know more, both for those who play within the rules and those who also run scams or sell financial products that are not as good as they seem. Normal people have no incentive to save. As the financial market is not for amateurs, many people simply give up on it. It might be because of a loss of money, or because it is too complicated, or because it takes a lot of time. Now, the fact is that many people try to invest to beat inflation, but they end up giving up. Now, since many people can't make their money yield above inflation, they have no incentive to save. What do you prefer to do when you receive a $100 bill? Would you rather buy a product today that is worth $100, or would you rather keep that note and buy something later when that money has this purchasing power of 50? People react to economic incentives. Money that depreciates over time encourages people to spend quickly. Money that doesn't lose value over time encourages people to save, to accumulate assets, to have a financial reserve that guarantees stability in situations of unemployment, illness, accident, or any other unforeseen event. Some authors, like Saifuddin Ammous, even think that this type of incentive creates a consumerist, immediatist society that only values the now, that doesn't think much about what might happen in the future, as if there is an economic incentive that is part of the character of society today. If immediately spending what you have is already a problem, imagine how it gets worse when people start spending what they don't have. Debt today already exists in a much larger scale than they once did. Credit is easily available to anyone with a low barrier to entry. The offer of easy credit to anyone is as if it were the strategy of a drug dealer who initially gives the product or sells it very cheaply to get the person addicted and then charge much more later. Credit makes a person addicted to that easy money, but the interest that comes later puts the person in a vicious cycle that can cause financial ruin. The paradox of a finite supply of money solves the problem of currency devaluation. Practically all the problems that we're talking about here could be solved if the government had the collateral to issue money. If they couldn't be flooding the market to create fresh money out of thin air every time they needed more revenue, your money wouldn't be devalued. You wouldn't be forced to be entering the financial market to preserve your purchasing power of your money. Bitcoin solves this problem in a paradoxical way. With a fixed issuance number, the Bitcoin network has no central authority. And even if it did, it wouldn't have the power to be creating more money whenever it wanted. As Bitcoin is basically software, a computer program, it is governed by mathematical rules that were defined back then and that cannot be changed without a network consensus. The most important rules of Bitcoin are precisely those related to how new Bitcoin units are issued. We have already explained in detail how this process works with mining in the episode number 21 of the Money Arata series. Here, what you need to understand is that the mathematical rules of Bitcoin only allow less than 21 million Bitcoins to be issued. The prospect is that around the year 2140, the new Bitcoins will finish being distributed. From then on, Bitcoins will be changing from hand to hand, but no new units of that currency will be generated. And without new issuances, there is no oversupply, devaluation. Thus, people are encouraged to hold Bitcoins, as they know that they will not lose purchasing power over time due to the decision of a central authority that devalues the acquired assets. Imagine that you got some Satoshis today, which are the smallest fractions of a Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what the amount is. It represents a fraction of the total 21 million Bitcoins. You have that fraction today. You have that fraction 5 years from now. You have it 10 years from now. You have it in 2140, and you have it later, until you decide to spend it or sell it. In Bitcoin, your fraction of the total money supply doesn't change because the money is not diluted. There is no central bank to issue new Bitcoins, and you're guaranteed that the percentage will be yours for as long as you want to hold it with your diamond hands. Therefore, the first incentive for anyone to save Bitcoin is to have a certainty of having an immutable entitlement, a fixed percentage of the first and largest digital currency created. Now, all consumption and all investment ultimately comes from the money that some people save. Bitcoin's incentive to hold money creates savers, and the existence of savers creates more and more people with the capacity to consume and invest, with the difference that these people can choose to consume or invest later on without having a hot potato that depreciates over time. And this creates a society where people think twice about how to spend their money. A society where people can value the future as much as the present, accumulating real wealth, as it was the case in the Golden Age. Bitcoin is the end of the great financial disease that has plagued the world. We can't just work and save. We are required now to invest in high-risk financial products. This is a phenomenon that is like a financial disease that affects the entire world. And the cause is that there is this uncontrolled issuance of fiat currency by governments, and Bitcoin solves that. If you're enjoying this line of thinking, I recommend that you read a full article by Parker Lewis that is one of the main references of this episode here. Imagine a world in which ordinary people don't have to invest part of their salary just to maintain the purchasing power of the money that they received for the work. Imagine a world where you know the rules of issuing your money without being at the mercy of the ruler's will. Imagine a world where people's economies can stay out of the financial market without suffering the consequences of a major devaluation. This world is possible if more and more people adopt a strong currency, real money that doesn't devalue over the years. This world is possible if more and more people adopt Bitcoin as money. A weak currency of the state that devalues over time forces people to enter the financial market, and that is like a financial disease. Now, on the other hand, Bitcoin is a hard currency that doesn't lose purchasing power over time. This is the end of the disease. You only enter the financial market if you want it, if you have the aptitude for it. Otherwise, you can just keep the Bitcoins, the keys of your Bitcoins, safely. You can go to sleep with the certainty that your money will not be devalued over the years because of the whims of a central authority. By having an immutable set of rules, Bitcoin ends this financial disease and it leaves the financial market only for the people who really like it, who want to invest. This financial illness is called by Parker Lewis the financialization of savings. And it is the result of an incentive of weak currencies that you invest and you get a return for at least that should be equal or more to the inflation, or you have to have the incentive to spend your money as soon as possible. Bitcoin reintroduces the incentives for people to be saving money, the confidence that they're not losing value. But this is not an overnight process. Just like our grandparents who lived during the gold standard, they were not forced to enter the financial market. Our grandchildren may not have to be forced to do that either. More and more people question the freedom that governments have to be printing money that devalues what we manage to gather. When we understand this, these people look for hard currencies like Bitcoin to preserve at least part of their equity without having to invest their own future in a risky financial market. If the world goes back to using sound money, financialization could return to the level that it had a few decades ago, restricted to professional investors and other groups of people who are really interested in the financial market. Crises like those of 2008 and 2020 showed many people that the financial market is not a place for amateurs. Many people lost money, they lost everything in these crises, and many will not have time to be trying to recover what they lost. These people were forced to be in the financial market because this was the only alternative, to not be losing money every day. The financial system is the result of wrong economic incentives that don't encourage people to be saving money. Bitcoin is slowly realigning these incentives so you don't have to be risking your future on something that you don't understand or that could overnight cut your equity in half. If you have the scarcest asset that has ever existed, this is enough for stop this search to continue looking for ways to be securing and preserving your wealth. When more and more people understand the simplicity and sophistication behind Bitcoin, the less will be the demand for complicated and risky financial market products. Bitcoin is simply savings, while financial assets are savings put at risk to compensate for the defect of a weak currency that devalues over time. As soon as everyone understands this and can choose between one and the other, The option will be the simplest and safest solution, and the result will be the great definancialization of the economy. It is not normal for you to be forced to invest your money just to try to keep your purchasing power in line with inflation. This only happens because we were required by law to use a weak currency without any backing, according to the whims of the rulers of the time. Now with Bitcoin, we can simply acquire sound money and we can be sure that we will not be diluted over time due to excess supply. But before buying Bitcoin, please, the ideal thing is that you understand how it works. This can be simpler than it sounds as long as you have someone to be showing you the way, and that is why I want to invite you to take a look at our Diamond Hands training. You can go to arata.tc/diamondhands right now.